योकारता तरणी मना काळजाच्या देठाक फुलल्या फुला परमळटा सोबीत फुला फुलाच्या रंगात रंगल्यात मना योकारता तरणी मना काळजाच्या देठाक फुलल्या फुला परमळटा सोबीत फुला फुलाच्या रंगात रंगल्यात मना वाट ही सृजनाची सृजनेच्या प्रतिभेच्या कल्पनेक फुटल्यात पाखा वाट ही सृजनेच्या प्रतिभेच्या कल्पनेक फुटल्यात पाखानी मळबाचे जादू केला काळजाच्या देठाक फुलल्या फुला योकारता तरणी मना काळजाच्या देठाक फुलल्या फुला परमळटा सोबीत फुला फुलाच्या रंगात रंगल्यात मना भास ही मोवाच्या उतराच्या गोडाईक आयल्या नशा भास ही मोवाच्या उतराच्या गोडाईक आयल्या नशा नशेतल्यान सभागर गंधीत झाला काळजाच्या देठाक फुलल्या फुला योकारता तरणी मना काळजाच्या देठाक फुलल्या फुला परमळटा सोबीत फुला फुलाच्या रंगात रंगल्यात मना आस ही पावसाच्या धारेतल्यान पाचवो सैम गायता गीता आस ही पावसाच्या धारेतल्यान पाचवो सैम गायता गीतातल्यान योकारता रसिक जना काळजाच्या देठाक फुलल्या फुला योकारता तरणी मना काळजाच्या देठाक फुलल्या फुला परमळटा सोबीत फुला फुलाच्या रंगात रंगल्यात मना फुलाच्या रंगात रंगल्यात मना फुलाच्या रंगात रंगल्यात मना
रुद्र आशिल्ली डॉक्टर हनुमंत चोपडेकर सरांची उतरांतल्या नशेंतल्यान सभागर गंधीत केल्ले खातीर सर तुमकां दिनवास येवकार उतरांचो येवकार अर्थाचो येवकार ज्ञानाचो येवकार विचारांचो येवकार तरण्या मनाचो नमस्कार कोंकणी भाषा मंडळाचे कोंकणी वाचन विश्व आणि गोंय विद्यापीठाची कोंकणी अध्ययन शाखा शणै गोंयबाब भाषा आणि साहित्य महाशाळा आयोजित कोंकणी वाचन विश्व एक जैतिवंत प्रवास ह्या परिसंवादात तुमकां सगळ्यांक माय मोगाचो येवकार भाषेची उदरगत जातली जाल्यार ती दिसान दीस लोकां मेरेन पावपाची गरज आसता पूण 2 वर्सां आदीं कोरोना नांवाचें संकट आयलें आनी आमकां 4 वण्टी मदीं बंद करून घालें दर एकल्याचो सहवास तुटलो अशा वेळार प्रत्यक्षान मेळून कार्यावळी करपाक बंदी आशिल्ली पुस्तक प्रकाशनां परिसंवाद अश्यो साबार कार्यावळी करपाक शक्य नाशिल्ले भाषेच्या उदरगतीक हें लुकसाणकारक आशिल्लें ह्या वेळार कोंकणी भाषा मंडळान फुडाकार घेवन कोंकणी वाचन विश्वाची सुरवात केली आयज ह्या वाचन विश्वाक 2 वर्सां पुराय जातात आनी तोच उत्सव मनोवपाक आयज ह्या परिसंवादाचें आयोजन केलां आयज आमकां मुखेल सोयरे म्हण लाभल्यात ज्येष्ठ शिक्षक गोंय विद्यापीठाचे उपकुलगुरू प्रोफेसर हरिलाल जी मेनन सर तशेंच आयच्या परिसंवादाक वाचनाचें म्हत्व ह्या विशयाचेर 20 भाशण करपी शणै गोंयबाब भाषा आनी साहित्य महाशाळेचे अधिष्ठाते प्रोफेसर के.एस. भट सर हांव मागतां गोंय विद्यापीठाचे शणै गोंयबाब भाषा आनी साहित्य महाशाळेच्या कोंकणी अध्ययनाचे संचालक डॉक्टर हनुमंत चोपडेकर सर तशेंच कोंकणी भाषा मंडळाचे अध्यक्ष भौमानिस्त अन्वेषा सिंगबाळ हांचे लागीं तांणी मानिस्तान माचयेर हाडचें हांव मागता शेणै गोंय भाशा आनी साहित्य महाशाळेच्या कोंकणी अध्ययनाचे संचालक डॉक्टर हनुमंत चोपटेकर सर हांचे लागीं तांणी ह्या प्रास्ताविक तशेंच येवकाराचे उलोवप करचें.
नमस्कार. असे म्हणतात, जो वाचता तो वाचता. द पर्सन हू रीड्स वूड सर्वाइव. कोंकणी भास साहित्य आणि संस्कृतायेच्या मळाचेर फाटली 60 वर्सां पोटतिडकीन वावुरपी कोंकणी भाशा मंडळान 2 वर्सां पयलीं एक रोपटे लायिल्लें आनी आयज 2 वर्सां उपरांत ह्या कोविड महामारीच्या काळाचेर जैत जोडून सुद्धा ह्या कोंकणी भाशा मंडळान जे रोपटे लायिल्ले ताजो एक वटवृक्ष जाल्लो आमकां दिश्टी पडटा. येस, आय एम टॉकिंग अबाउट कोंकणी वाचन विश्व. कोंकणी भाशा मंडळान एक कोंकणी वाचन विश्व नावाचो एक उपक्रम सुरू केल्लो 2 वर्सां पयलीं आनी आयज आमी पळयता की एक वाचनाची संस्कृती नॉट ओन्ली इन गोवा, अक्रॉस द रिजन तयार जाल्ली आसा. Reading culture has been developed across the region, especially with related to Konkani language and literature. आणि आज गोंय विद्यापीठाच्या शेणै गोंयबा भाशा आणि साहित्य महाशाळेच्या अंतर्गत चलपी कोंकणी अध्ययन शाखेच्या जोड पालवान कोंकणी भाशा मंडळान हो एक वेगळे तरेचो खाशेलो उपक्रम दिसभरा खातीर राबयल्लो आसा. ताका आमी दिसभराची चर्चा सत्र म्हणू शकता वा सिम्पोजियम म्हणू शकता, जेणे करून कोंकणी भाशेंतल्यान तयार जाल्ली समीक्षा, भास विज्ञानाची पुस्तकां, समाज भास विज्ञानाची पुस्तकां, समाजशास्त्रीय समीक्षा पद्धत आसत, तुलनात्मक समीक्षा पद्धत आसत, अशा तरेच्या शास्त्रीय पुस्तकांची जी रचना जाल्ली आसा ताजेर एक खाशेली चर्चा जावची ह्या आवेसान आयच्या दिसाचो हो उपक्रम आमी राबयल्लो आसा. अँड आय एम व्हेरी मच फॉर्च्युनेट अँड वी आर व्हेरी मच फॉर्च्युनेट दॅट for this inaugural function we have with us the Vice Chancellor of Goa University, Adarniya Senior Professor Arilalji Menonji. हांव तुमच्या सगळ्यांच्या वतीन तांकां टाळयांच्या सांगाता साहित्य अकादमीचो एक प्रतिनिधी म्हणून हांव काम करतना हांव पळयल्लें आसा की चडांत चड फार्मालिटी जी आसा ती उणी करप आणि चडांत चड विचारांक जी आसा ती चालना दिवप अशे तरेचो एक उपक्रम चलता. तातूंतल्यानूच स्फूर्त घेवन आमी फुलां हाडूंक ना, फार्मालिटी जी आसा ती कुशीक दवरल्या आणि कितें भेटवस्तू दिवपाची आसा जाल्यार पुस्तकाच्या रुपान ती दिवपाची केल्ली आसा. वी आर ऑल्सो फॉर्च्युनेट टू हॅव विथ अस डीन ऑफ दी शेणै गोंयबा स्कूल ऑफ लँग्वेजीस अँड लिटरेचर, आदरणीय प्रोफेसर के.एस. भटजी एज अ की नोट एड्रेसी. जी जे भाशेन ते करपाचे आसात आणि संवसारीक मळावेल्या साहित्याचो कस घोटिल्ले अशे तरेचे एक विद्वान आसा. आय एम शुअर दॅट ही इज गोइंग टू गायड अस ऑन दीस पर्टिक्युलर टॉपिक कॉल्ड इम्पॉर्टन्स ऑफ रिडिंग्स. आमचे मदीं आसात, हांव तांकां आमी येवकार दिता आनी टाळयांच्या सांगातान परत एकदा तांकां येवकार मेळचो अशें तुमचे कडेन मागता. For this inaugural function we have with us President of Konkani Bhasha Mandal, young, energetic and dynamic President I would say, Advocate अन्वेषा सिंगबाळ. म्हाका दिसता टाळयो मागपाचें ना, कारण फाटल्या 63 वर्सां कोंकणी भाशा मंडळाच्या बॅनरा सकयल युवा महोत्सव आसत वा वेगवेगळे तरेचे साहित्यीक आनी सांस्कृतीक उपक्रम आसत, त्या उपक्रमान ताणीन आपली जी योग्यता आसा ती दाखोवपाचो प्रयत्न केल्लो आसा. एक कवयित्री आसा, एक कोंकणी एक्टिव्हिस्ट म्हणजे कार्यकर्ती आसा आणि सगळ्यात महत्वाची गजाल म्हळ्यार साहित्य अकादमीचो यूथ अवॉर्ड. शी इज अ रिसिपियंट ऑफ यूथ लिटररी अवॉर्ड फ्रॉम दी साहित्य अकादमी आणि चडांत चड तरणाट्या बरोवप्यांक, तरणाट्या वाचकांक, तरणाट्या विद्यार्थ्यांक एकट्या हाडपाची ताक तिचे मदीं आसा. हें तिणें खासा करून वेगवेगळ्या तरेच्या उपक्रमांतल्यान सिद्ध केल्लेंच आसा. ताजे भायर कोंकणी वाचन विश्व ह्या उपक्रमांतल्यान तिणें सिद्ध केल्लें आसा. I would like to take a note of presence of our Vice Dean for Academics, Professor Ushali Mandrekar Madam, तशेंच Vice Dean for शेणै गोंयबा School of Languages and Literature for Research, Dr. प्रकाश करेकर सर. हांव नोंद करपाक सोदतां, वेगवेगळ्या महाविद्यालयांतले काही शिक्षक हांगासर उपस्थित आसात. आमची वेगवेगळी सत्रां जी जाता तातूंतय बीन आमकां मार्गदर्शन करपी कांय मानेस्त आमचे मदीं आसात, तांकां हांव येवकार दिवपाक सोदतां. पत्रकारिश्ट आसा, प्रिंट आणि इलेक्ट्रॉनिक मिडियाचे तांकां येवकार दिवपाक सोदता. आणि जे विद्यार्थी मोठ्या संख्येन या दिसभराच्या चर्चा सत्राक हांगासर उपस्थित आसात तांकांय बी मना काळजांतल्यान येवकार दिता आसतना हांव सांगपाक सोदतां, आय वूड लायक टू इन्फॉर्म माय गेस्ट ऑन द डायस दॅट This is an initiative taken by Konkani Bhasha Mandal of developing a reading cultures amongst the youth, especially dealing with Konkani language and literature. And we have witnessed that almost young researcher, young writer, young critics has participated in this innovative program, and it has reached across the region. As I told you, ताचो impact जो आसा तो across the region पाविल्लो आसा आणि एक चळवळ, एक मुवमेंट अशा पद्धतीने आम्ही विटनेस करता कोंकणी वाचन विश्वाच्या माध्यमांतल्यान. आमचे कडेन बी कोंकणी विद्यापीठान कोंकणी अध्ययन शाखेन सुद्धा अशा तरेचो उपक्रम चलता. आणि सगळ्यात बरी गजाल म्हळ्यार हांव अन्वेषाबाईक देव बरें करूं म्हणटा की तांणी दुसऱ्या वर्सा खातीर म्हणजे वर्सुकी दीस आसा हो 8 सप्टेंबराक 2 वर्सां पयलीं सुरू केल्लो ह्या उपक्रमाक खंय तरी विद्यापीठ स्तराचेर आणि कोंकणी अध्ययन शाखेच्या आधारांतल्यान एक वेगळे तरेचो विचार पावोवपाच्या नदरेंतल्यान ताणें आमचे कडेन संपर्क साधलो आणि आमच्या वरिष्ठांनी सुद्धा आमकां हो कार्यक्रम आयोजीत करपाक मदत केली किंवा आधार दिलो, तेंको दिलो. ताका लागून अन्वेषाबाईक हांव देव बरें करूं म्हणटा, तशेंच आमच्या वरिष्ठांक सुद्धा दिनवासता. इश्टानो, एक वाचन संस्कृती विद्यार्थ्यांमध्ये तयार जावची आणि स्पेशली नव्या भुरग्यांमध्ये तयार जावची, नव्या वाचकांमध्ये तयार जावची, नव्या शिक्षकांमध्ये तयार जावची, नव्या संशोधकांमध्ये तयार जावची हो आवेश बाळगून अशा तरेच्या उपक्रमाची रचना केल्ली आसा. आणि तो जैतिवंत खीण आसा आणि ह्या जैतिवंत खिणाचेर आयज हांव सांगपाक सोदता. सर, वी हॅव डिवायडेड दिस पर्टिक्युलर symposium in different sections, and some of the researcher, young writer, young critics, they are going to present a research paper especially on the literature written on the linguistic aspect of a language, socio-linguistic criticism, and whereby comparative criticism, socio-linguistic criticism, sociological criticism, and the researchers are going to present paper on these topics in different sessions, and I am very much sure that you people are going to enrich by attending this particular symposium we have organized with the help of कोंकणी भाषा मंडळ. हांव परत एकदा तुमकां सगळ्यांक येवकार दिता. खास करून कोंकणी अध्ययन शाखेंतले आमचे अध्यापक आसा, रमाबाई मुरकुंडे आसा, कृपालीबाई नायक आसा, प्रकाश बाबाचें नांव हांवें घेतिल्लेंच आसा, हांव स्वता आसा. आमी मुद्दाम वेगवेगळे तरेचे उपक्रम करता आसतना स्टुडंट सेंट्रीक अशा तरेचे उपक्रम राबयता. भाषा मंडळ तशाच पद्धतीचे उपक्रम राबयता. अशा तरेच्या उपक्रमांत जेन्ना जेन्ना आमी तुमकां उलो मारतले तेन्ना तेन्ना तुमी येयात. हांव मुद्दाम नोंद करता गोरखबाब शिरसाट हांगासर आसा, ताका 17 ते पेपर सादर करतले. हांगासर आमगेले विद्या प्रबोधिनीचे शिक्षक आसात, वेगवेगळ्या हेर महाविद्यालयांतल्यान आयिल्ले शिक्षक आनी विद्यार्थी आसा. हांव तुमकां परत एक फावट आमच्याच अध्ययन शाखेंतल्यान पास जाल्ले आनी वेगवेगळ्या महाविद्यालयांत शिकोवपी अशे तरेचे अध्यापक आसा. हांव परत एकदा तुमकां सगळ्यांक येवकार दिता आनी तुमचे कडेन मागता की ह्या दिसभराच्या विचार मंथनांतल्यान जे अमृत मेळटा आनी तें तुमी घेवन वचात. आनी जशें हांव सदांच सांगता, वीक कितें आसा आमचे कडेन दियात आनी ताजें एश्युरन्स तुमकां दिता. ते विकाचे सुद्दां परत अमृत करून एक विचारांचें एक संचीत जें आसा तें आमी घेवन फुडें वतले. परत एकदा चडांत चड देव बरें करूं आनी येवकार.
देव बरें करूं सर. एक रोंप्याक वाड मेळटली जाल्यार ताका उदक, सारें, सुर्याची किरणां लागतात. हांव मागता हेच्या मानेस्ता लागीं तांणी ह्या रोंप्याक उदक घालून आमच्या नानांत सारें आनी विचारांची किरणां घालपी ह्या परिसंवादाचें उक्तावण करचें. सगळ्यांक देव बरें करूं. आयज पानावयले विचार मोबायलार आयल्यात, ई बुक्स तयार जावपाक लागल्यात. आजेचो जागो आतां ई स्टोरीन घेतला. अशा ह्या दिसपट्ट्या वाट्ट्या तंत्रज्ञानाच्या युगांत वाचन कितलें म्हत्वाचें हाचेर म्हाका शणैगोंयबाब भाशा आनी साहित्य महाशाळेचे अधिष्ठाते प्रोफेसर के.एस. भट सर हांचे लागीं तांणी आमकां मार्गदर्शन करचें.
Professor Menon, Honorable Vice Chancellor of Goa University, Advocate Anvesha Singh Bhatt, President of Konkani Bhasha Mandal, Professor Vishali, Dr. Prakash, Dr. Hanumant, colleagues, students, ladies and gentlemen. At the very outset, I congratulate Konkani Bhasha Mandal and the discipline of Konkani for taking this wonderful initiative. It's the need of the hour. Today, reading habit is the main casualty among the present generation, which was not so until your generation appeared. Let me be very frank with you. I know that today's generation is digitally empowered. You are wizards when it comes to digital instruments, whether it is mobile or laptop. Nevertheless, what has happened in the whole process is the conspicuous absence of reading habit, particularly among the present generation. Therefore, unfortunately, we are producing today digitally empowered illiterates. I'm using the term illiterate as a metaphor, which is suggestive of absence of this beautiful reading habit. And in that context, again, I congratulate my colleagues here from the Department of Konkani and also the President of Konkani Bhasha Mandal. And they have been doing it on war footing for many years. Particularly, I was told it started during the pandemic. So please keep going, and that's the only way to redeem ourselves. I'm not saying that I'm presenting before you my keynote, but I would like to share certain thoughts of myself about reading, or to be more specific, the joy of reading. Let me begin with a story. There were two gentlemen. I don't want to call them gentlemen. One was Sir Jeremy Bentham and another was James Mill. James Mill was a well-known historian of the 19th century England, and Bentham was a philosopher, and he was a founder of a notorious philosophy that is known as utilitarian philosophy. In fact, this philosophy is at the bedrock of modern capitalistic system. So, what is utilitarian philosophy? It believes that our human life is all about the pursuit of happiness. We are all here for the pursuit of happiness. That is the purpose of human life. Make no mistake, it is made the part of US Constitution. One of the fundamental rights, the pursuit of happiness. Maybe at the cost of somebody else's happiness, they don't bother, and therefore it became highly controversial. And they wanted mentor somebody who would carry on. James Mill and Jeremy Bentham, they were the co-founders of this utilitarian philosophy. So, fortunately, Bentham didn't have children. Unfortunately, James Mill got a boy, and Bentham was a godfather. And they focused their attention upon this young boy. When he reached the age of 3, they started indoctrinating him. They wanted him to become a great economist, a great philosopher. So only, they didn't allow him to mingle with other children. They didn't allow him to read any books other than economics or to some extent mathematics. That's all. Nothing else. They didn't allow him at all. And yes, the boy became a great scholar, no doubt about it. But he writes later, I reached the premature old age at the age of 17. His name was John Stuart Mill. who later on became one of the great economists of the 19th century, England, John Stuart Mill. Now, what is he saying? Luckily for him, by then both of them were dead and gone, his godfather and his father. And, he was going through depression because he was not allowed to read any other books at all. Then he writes in his autobiography that he started reading Wordsworth, the poetry of Wordsworth. And that was the moment of redemption in his life. At that moment, he reclaimed his life. So, my dear students, let me tell you that today, I'm not saying that we are not, today's generation is not reading. No, not at all. But it is, I would call it a single track reading. A medical student would read only books related to medicine. Similarly, a literature student would read books only related to literature. Particularly, you have Marathi literature, Konkani literature, or English literature. For instance, I tell my own English literature students that unless you read Shane Goyabab or Pundlik Nayak, you won't understand English literature at all. Right? You won't understand at all, because literature is one. That's the most important thing. And moreover, let me give you some of the examples of some great scientists or great writers. Take, for instance, Einstein, one of the greatest scientists of all time. He was well versed in Western literature and Western philosophy, and he was also good at Western music. That is Einstein for you. And similarly, Abdul Kalam, he was well versed in Tamil literature, particularly ancient Tamil literature, a great philosopher. We all know that he was a great scientist. He was also a great, because he was a voracious reader. He didn't say, my area is missile technology. Let me read only books related to missile technology. He never did that. And it is also true of some of the great writers whom you study. They didn't confine themselves only to literature. And because of that, they ended up as great writers. Let me give you the example of Shivaram Karant, Dr. Shivaram Karant. He got his Jnanapith Award for his fiction in Kannada. He is the greatest fiction writer in Kannada. But I tell you, he is also the greatest writer of science in Kannada. He was instrumental in popularizing science in Kannada. He edited Vijnana Vishwakosha way back in 1940s. He tried to popularize science. And because he was a voracious reader, he did not discriminate. He went on and on reading everything related to science and literature. And he was an environmentalist. Way back in 80s, he fought against Kaiga plant, which is in Karwar, and he even stood for elections. Of course, he lost it. That's a different story. The point is, my dear students, today we are the victims of compartmentalization. That is totally undesirable. That is totally unacceptable. Well, again, there is a story behind it. If you go back to the ancient times, you don't find this kind of division at all. Aristotle, for instance, Aristotle, all of you know Aristotle as author of Poetics, Kavya Shastra. But remember, Aristotle was also into astronomy. He was also into botany. He was also into astrophysics, and he was an amateur doctor. So, he was a moving encyclopedia of ancient Greece. And his guru, Plato, who is considered to be the father of Western philosophy, he never said you should read only philosophy. In fact, he established one school which is known as an academy, and from that academy you have the adjective today, academic. Got it? So outside his academy there was a board. Those who know not mathematics need not enter. This is Plato, the philosopher, for you. So, For a considerable period of time, knowledge was considered to be one. There were no divisions at all. The whole thing happened in the 17th century. This kind of division. And there was one philosopher, he is a part of the Enlightenment movement. His name is Immanuel Kant. So it was Immanuel Kant who spoke about the division of faculties. So today in the universities you have various faculties, right? It was done, this whole thing was conceptualized by Immanuel Kant, and subsequently the German universities came out with the faculty of law, the faculty of medicine, the faculty of literature, the faculty of philosophy, and so on and so forth. And today the whole tradition is continuing, and I'm happy that we are getting rid of this notion of faculty, and we are using a more holistic concept of a school. The purpose is for easy exchange of ideas, right? And we are, slowly we are coming back to the notion of, notion that knowledge is one. So the point is, when you read different types of books, you become a different person. So I know most of you are literature students here. I request all of you not to confine yourself only to literature. So many exciting things are happening in science. Please read it. There are so many good books on science. Let me give you a couple of examples. There is one book by Harari, Sapiens. It talks about the evolution of mankind for 6 million years. What happened to us? How did we arrive? The arrival of the species of Homo sapiens. It's a wonderful book. It reads like a novel. Wonderful book. Please read it. And let me give you, one more example. That is Tony Joseph. He has written a book titled Indians. It tries to trace the origin of Indians. We have different types of people, different ethnic groups, ethnic compositions. How did migration happen across centuries? So we should all know. We can't be oblivious of what is happening in our own neighboring fields. They are also part of our world. Climate change. A student of literature should be sensitive to this issue of climate change. You just cannot say, it's not my field. You cannot say, it is somebody else's field. No, it's also your field. Right? So, you should talk about it with your classmates, with your neighbors, because that's the need of the hour. And that is possible only if you expose yourself to reading, or only if you want to experience the joy of reading. And more importantly, this reading habit, it liberates you from what I call jingoism. That jingoism could be linguistic jingoism or national or whatever. It happens, at different levels. Some years ago, I was sharing one session in Mangalore, one of the seminars, and one guy was, he started telling me, or telling the audience, Sanskrit is the mother of English. I asked him, have you studied Sanskrit? No. And I know his knowledge of English is very limited. Then I told him, that's not the way to put it. Both Sanskrit and English, they are part of one larger linguistic family which is known as Indo-European languages. They are part of that family. Who is a mother, who is a father? That's not the way we deal with the languages, right? We recognize the kinship, the commonalities, and both these languages had a common ancestor. We don't know. Some 5,000 years ago, steppes, on the steppes, there was a common ancestor, and we call it a Proto-Indo-European language. That's the name given to it. Nobody knows how was it, and from there it branched out, and across centuries, different languages appeared on the scene. And Sanskrit one of the ancient languages in the world. That is part of it. And similarly, English, which appeared 1000 or 1200 years ago, it is part of it, part of the same language. So, a person who has read doesn't come out with this kind of utterance. So, it is the product of one's ignorance. Similarly, my mother tongue is Tulu, and I'm part of a movement that tries to, propagate the inclusion of Tulu in the 8th schedule of the Indian Constitution. So we are meeting and we are exchanging ideas, and one guy came out with the idea that Tulu has a script of its own. Actually speaking, Tulu language doesn't have a script of its own. Got it? And I said, whatever script they are talking about, it is a 16th century Malayalam script. That's it. It's a bit stylized. So a few aksharas, they have disappeared. That's it. The point is, we people, we Tuluas and Malayali speakers, we have a historical association that goes back to centuries. So there is a migration. So many Tulu-speaking people have migrated to Kerala, and they have written their Puranas or whatever in in Malayalam script. And now these people are arguing that that is Tulu script. It's not Tulu script. And in fact, some of them are not so happy with me because they are saying that I'm diluting the movement. But I tell them on their face, I'm an academician. So it's not my job to come out with a politically convenient truth. Let's be very honest about it. I always tell them, you consider Sanskrit one of the greatest languages. There is no doubt about it. Sanskrit is one of the most beautiful and one of the most perfect languages in the world. No doubt about it. But does Sanskrit have a script? No. Sanskrit doesn't have a script. Got it? Whatever script we are using today, Devanagari, it appeared only in the 8th century AD. Sanskrit has a history of more than 4,000 years. So how can you say that, that is the script? In the 8th century, they adopted some, Devanagari script. That's all. Prior to that, it was Brahmi script. All the inscriptions of Ashoka, of course, they are not in Sanskrit. They are in Prakrit. They are in Brahmi Lipi. Perhaps they were using Brahmi Lipi at that time. Got it? And I always give them the example of the beauty of Konkani language. I consider Konkani language one of the best in the world because that's the only language, which uses 5 scripts, and it has enriched Konkani language. Konkani language, today Konkani literature is produced in 5 scripts. I think it is unprecedented in the history of languages. Devanagari, Romi, Kannada, Malayalam, and Arabic. The Nawayat Muslims of Karwa, they have been using the Arabic script, and we have to welcome it. So we shouldn't show any kind of untouchability when it comes to scripts or whatever, and you become enriched if you are exposed to reading. And more importantly, when it comes to reading, it makes you broad-minded. I always tell my students, if Osama bin Laden were to read Shakespeare or Dostoevsky or any other writer, he wouldn't have decided to destroy those 2 twin towers because he was not into reading. His mind was limited. He was like Kupa Manduka, a frog in the well. And because of that, he took that decision. No, empowered person, empowered through reading, would even imagine that. Got it? So we become better persons when we read more books, because books are the crystallization of the thoughts of different people. People who belong to different races, different linguistic communities, different ethnic groups, or different temporal worlds across centuries. And that is how we are able to imbibe their thoughts. Ano bhadraha kritavo yanto vishwataha. Let noble thoughts come from all over the world. That's what our ancestors said, and that's what we have to follow. And how do we imbibe these noble thoughts? Only by exposing ourselves to all kinds of writing. So, finally, let me tell you, my dear friends, reading makes you a better human being because it enables you to introspect, it enables you to review your life, it enables you to review the various choices you have made, and thereby it empowers you to reset the relationships or whatever. Got it? As human beings, we are living in a complex world. It's a very challenging world. Only through reading and reading alone, we get empowered and we get enabled to face the challenges of life. So I exhort all the students here, the youngsters, younger generations, please read and don't discriminate. Read everything, whatever comes on your way. Don't say it is sociology, don't say it is science, don't say it's English or Marathi, or no. Every language is beautiful. Whatever is produced in every language, whether it is literature or science or doesn't matter, it's beautiful. That enriches you and that makes you better. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir, for enlightening us with facts and knowledge about different languages and reading. कोंकणी वाचन विश्व सुरू करताना एक मोख आशिल्ली. कोविडाच्या काळात कोंकणी साहित्यच न्हय तर कोंकणी साहित्याविशींची चर्चा लोकांमेरेन पावोवपाची. विचार जरी कोंकणी भाशा मंडळाचो आसलो तरी हे कार्य फुडें व्हेलें ते भाशेन जोडिल्ल्या तरणाट्यांनी. आनी जेन्ना तरणाटे काम आपल्या भुजार घेतात तेन्ना ते काम आनीक नेटान फुडें वता. कोंकणी भाशा मंडळान ह्या तरणाट्यांक फुडें काडलें आनी कोंकणी वाचन विश्वाची घोडी तांच्या हातांत दिल्या. हे तरणाटे वेगळ्या वेगळ्या महाविद्यालयाचे तशेंच गोंय विद्यापीठाचे विद्यार्थी आसात आनी सांगपाक खोस भोगता वाचन विश्वाच्यो आयज मेरेन 40 कार्यावळी जाल्यात आनी आयची ही 41वी कार्यावळ. आयचो उत्सव सादर करता आसतना आमकां मुखेल सोयरे म्हण लाभिल्ले ज्येष्ठ शिक्षक गोंय विद्यापीठाचे कुलगुरू प्रोफेसर हरिलालजी मेनन सर हांचे लागीं म्हाका तांणी आयच्या ज्ञानात आनीक विचार जोडचे. I request our senior professor, Vice Chancellor of Goa University, Professor Harilal Menon sir, to kindly share his thoughts and knowledge with us.
Good morning. Professor K.S. Bhatt, Dean, Shanoy Goenbach School of Language and Literature, Professor Bashari, Dr. Prakash, Vice Deans, and Advocate Anvesha Singhbal, President KBM, Dr. Hanumant, all my other colleagues from various schools, my dear students, ladies and gentlemen. In fact, I think at the outset I would compliment both Konkani Bhasha Mandal and the Konkani discipline of the school for organizing this wonderful, the symposium. Because this is the need of the hour. Reading is the backbone of research. You know that in any higher education institution, because you all have come for higher degree like MA in Konkani, MA in Hindi, MA in Marathi, etc. But after that, certainly most of you would be, aiming at becoming a faculty member, becoming a teacher, irrespective of whether it is a school, college or in a higher education institution. You have to read, because only through read you can get the knowledge. And those who would like to go for higher studies, like for example research leading to PhD degree, unless and until you read, you won't be able to understand that where is the knowledge gap. Because research has different components. One is that idealization. You get the idea and then subsequently what you do is that you hypothesize. But to get the idea itself you have to read. Because only through reading, because what is research? Research is read plus search. Search again and again. So what is that I have to search again and again? That answer is that you read. So you read and then understand where is the knowledge gap. For example, I will tell you, as far as myself being a science person, as far as the sciences are concerned, we read and we get the idea. Once we get the idea, then the next step is that we go for hypothesis. We will have the hypothesis, and once we have the hypothesis, next is then to generate data. How to generate data? If my research is field oriented, then I will have to go to the field. When I am in the field, how do I sample that? For sampling there is a methodology. For sampling there is a protocol. How do I do that? That also I get from reading. Reading different literature. Literature I mean is related to the science literature I mean. And once that is done, then once I am back to the laboratory, again I have certain protocol. What are the protocols to be adopted once I am in the laboratory? How do I analyze the sample? And once I analyze the sample, is it that I am getting the accurate data or not? Because you have to generate accurate data. It's all same as far as the language is concerned or science is concerned. Because in the language also you have to have the proper data. See, I won't be able to, or I won't like to read any book if it is not properly written. In the sense that when you read a book, you get that sweetness of that. So therefore, reading and writing. So in the research, you have different components. One is that idealizing and then hypothesizing and then generating data. Once that is done, the most important thing is that art of writing that. So when you read this itself, you would again imbibe the habit of writing. Like for example, let's say if I say that how do I write a manuscript to be published in a scientific journal. First and foremost is that I have to have something called abstract. What is abstract? Abstract, the job of abstract is to make the reader understand that this is the content, this is the synopsis. Abstract is nothing but a synopsis. So the abstract tells you that this is the content of this paper. Now is it of your interest, then you can go ahead with that. So abstract is basically for that. And then you give an introduction. Introduction is nothing but the literature review. That means what has been done in the past, in the so far in the research in this particular field, what has been done, and that is being portrayed in the introduction. And then at the end of the introduction, you say that because of these things, this is the knowledge gap. Therefore, this particular work has been taken, and then this is the output of that. Then we have to, in fact, as a scientist, I have to show that what is the methodology I have adopted, because we have different equipments. And those equipments we have to calibrate. Like I can even have a parallel with that of language also, because you have to calibrate yourself with all those kind of text. So here I am calibrating the instrument, there you are calibrating your mind. Actually when I watered the plant, my thought process was that this symposium is basically to water the brain of this younger generation who is sitting over here. That is the thought process came to me. And therefore, once you have the data and then calibration. So data and methodology we say, that's one section of the paper where we write that how this data have been generated, which instrument has been used, what is the calibration, etc. etc. So that means we have to show that the data we have generated is accurate, because only from accurate data you can get science. You can really get the science. Why do we do this? Once we get the science out of that, this particular aspect is going to be the policy for the government. See, I'll give you a simple example. You know that most of your parents, let them not have any problem, but at least they go for BP checkup, right? Pressure checkup. Okay, when I also go. But if you go to one doctor and then have the BP checkup, in case the instrument is not calibrated, the instrument will say that your pressure is 180 by 100. What the doctor does, he will say that, he will prescribe the medicine and say that you have this medicine. Actually your pressure is very less. The instrument is faulty. So what we do is that, normally what I do is that, in the past, I will say not now, I go to some other doctor or some other, so wherever I get a good reading, then I find that, oh, I am fine. I don't have to have any medicine, because this process, what happens is that because the instrument is faulty, you start taking medicine, and by taking medicine you become a patient. That's what happened. So many of the people do not realize that. Why I am having a analogy with the data here. Data have to be proper, whether it is for your health or for the scientific aspect or any other research. That's the point I want to say. Because only when you generate accurate data and then you can get a proper science, and that proper science can further go as a policy for the government. Because see, we get crores of rupees project. If you just go to by the side of MCA old building, you can see one big tower there. That's actually a tower which I got from ISRO, around 1 crore project, and wherein there are number of sensors are there at different levels. Those sensors are generating data, wind speed, wind direction, and then solar radiation, and then dust storm, how it affects the climate, what is the reason for the cloud bursts. Because nowadays you find that the moment you sleep and the next day morning when you get up, you find that your house is flooded. Like in Bangalore, that's what happened recently. So therefore, unless and until you do a research, because through research what you do is that, as I said earlier, you have the science, and that would be the monitoring mechanism for the government. And you also know that in 2020, in the coastal waters of Goa, we had a cyclone, and cyclone has uprooted so many trees. We were under dark for almost 1 week or 10 days. So all these kind of research we are doing. So what I am saying is that whether it is science, language or humanity, these are all parallel. So you have to do good research, and that research is actually for the humanity. Because only through research you can uplift the common man's standard of life. Whether it is language, humanity or science. Okay? So therefore, the most important ingredient for anything wherein you want to upgrade the common man is reading habit. So with this, I stop. I don't have to add anything further because I have one more function to go in Fonda. I have to go for. There is a keynote. I'm called as a keynote speaker for one of the function, and then I have to, and therefore, my last word, as I said, you please inculcate the habit of reading, and then only through reading you can come up in your life. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. आमची याद आमच्या मानेस्तांच्या काळजांत उरची देखून हांव मागता डॉक्टर प्रकाश परेकर सर हांचे लागीं तांणी मानेस्तांक यादस्तीक पेटोवची. आयचे मुखेल सोयरे गोंय विद्यापीठाचे कुलगुरू प्रोफेसर हरिलाल मेनन सर, आयचे 20 वर्षां करपी प्रोफेसर KS भट सर, कोंकणी भाशा मंडळाक देव बरें करूं सर. कोंकणी भाशा मंडळाक ही कार्यावळ करपाक आदार करपी शणै गोंयबाब भाशा आनी साहित्य महाशाळेचे कोंकणी अध्ययन हांकां कोंकणी भाशा मंडळा कडच्यान ही माये मोगाची भेट. मागता कोंकणी भाशा मंडळाचे अध्यक्ष भोमानेस्त अन्वेषा सिंग हांचे लागीं ताणें कोंकणी अध्ययनाक ही भेट दिवची. अनेस्तान देव बरें करूं. कोंकणी भास आयज तरणाट्यांच्या हातांत आसा. उदरगतीची पावलां मारीत कोविडाच्या काळांत कोंकणी भाशा मंडळान साबार मळांचेर आवावर केलो आनी खेरीतपणान शिक्षणीक मळाचेर कोंकणीतल्या तरणाट्यांक आनी जाणकारांच्या आदारान शिक्षणीक व्हिडिओज तयार केले. गोंयभरांतल्या शिक्षकांक घेवन कोंकणीतले OER तयार केले. बाल साहित्य, शाणी मस्ती सीडी आनी जायतो वावर केला. मागता कोंकणी भाशा मंडळाचे अध्यक्ष भोमानेस्त अन्वेषा सिंग हांचे लागीं तांणी ह्या वेळार उपकाराचे उलोवप करचें.
देव बरें करूं पलाशबाब. सगळ्यांक नमस्कार. आयच्या कार्यावळीचे मुखेल सोयरे गोंय विद्यापीठाचे कुलगुरू हरिलाल मेनन सर आयज आपले सुंदर विचार हांगा व्यक्त करून बीज भाशण सादर केल्ले KS भट सर, डॉक्टर हनुमंत चोपडेकार, सभाघरात उपस्थित सगळे मानेस्त शिक्षक आनी म्हज्या तरणाटे इश्टांनो. 2 वर्सां फाटीं कोंकणी भाशा मंडळान एक ल्हानशें बी रोयिल्लें आनी 2 वर्सां भितर ते इतले व्हडले जातले अशें आमी चिंतूंक नाशिल्ले. पूण त्या भियाचो येदो व्हडलो रूख जालो आनी ताचे जैत ताची खोस आज तुमच्या सगळ्यांच्या बरोबर हांगा मनोवपाक मेळटा ही म्हज्या खातीर आनी कोंकणी भाशा मंडळा खातीर खूब उमेदीची गजाल. ह्या वेळार ही कार्यावळ हांगा गोंय विद्यापीठांत घडोवन हाडपाक दिली म्हणून हांव सुरवातीकूच गोंय विद्यापीठाचे आनी म्हाजे बशिल्ल्या सगळ्या मानेस्तांचे उपकार व्यक्त करता. 2 वर्सां फाटीं जेन्ना आमी कोविडाक सगळींच जाणां सामोरी वतालीं आनी अध्यक्ष म्हणून हांवें तेन्नाच सुत्रां सांबाळिल्लीं आनी आमच्या मुखार मोठो प्रश्न आशिल्लो की कशे तरेन एकामेकां कडेन संपर्कांत रावचें, कशे तरेन जें काम कोंकणी भाशा मंडळ करत आयलां ते ह्या कोविड काळांतूय कशे तरेन मुखार वचचें. आनी त्या वेळार आमी कोंकणी वाचन विश्वाचें एक ल्हानशें सपन पळयलें आनी सुरवात केली. आमच्या मुखार ध्येय खूब स्पश्ट आशिल्लें. आयचे तरणाटे जर वाचनात आनी वाचना त्या पेक्षाय चड वाचूनय ते आपली मतां व्यक्त करनात, आपले विचार व्यक्त करनात जाल्यार ह्या हुस्क्याक एक तरेची वाट करून दिवपाचो यत्न आमचो आशिल्लो. आनी ते करता आसतना ह्या हुस्क्याची चावी आमी तरणाट्यांच्याच हातांत दिवपाची थारायली. तांकांच सांगलें की तुमी आतां हे कुलूप उक्तें करात आनी तुमी आमकां वाट दाखयात. आनी जे पलाश बाबांनी सांगले ज्यो 40 कार्यावळी आमी आयोजीत केल्यो त्या 40 कार्यावळीक म्हाका दिसता आतां मेरेन 100 वयर तरी तरणाट्यांनी आपली मतां व्यक्त केल्यां आसतलीं आनी पुरायपणान 25-30 वर्सांच्या वयोगटांतले हे तरणाटे आशिल्ले जांणी दाखोवन दिलें की ते व्यक्तूय जावपाक शकतात, ते वाचतात आनी जे वाचतात ताचे विशीं आपले विचारूय ते मेकळेपणान उक्तावपाक शकतात. म्हाका याद जाता उक्तावण सत्रा उपरांत पयलींच जी कार्यावळ जाल्ली तातूंत आमी शणै गोंयबाब हांच्याच साहित्याचेर चर्चा दवरिल्ली आनी डॉक्टर प्रकाश पर्येकर हांणी मुखेल उलोवप केल्लें. आनी त्या कार्यावळी उपरांत आमी थारायलें की ही कोंकणी वाचन विश्वाची जी घुडी आसा ती फक्त कोंकणी भाशा मंडळा पुरती उरपाक जायना, ती तरणाट्यांनी मुखार व्हरपाक जाय. आनी त्या कार्यावळीत जे आपले विचार व्यक्त करपी गोविंद मोपकार हाका आमी ह्या कोर ग्रुपाचो पयलो वांगडी केलो. आनी ताच्या नंतर ज्या तरणाट्यांनी ज्या कार्यावळीत विचार व्यक्त केले, पेपर मांडले, तेच तरणाटे ह्या कोर ग्रुपाचो भाग जायत गेले आनी आज 40 वयर तरणाटे कोंकणी वाचन विश्व मुखार व्हरता. आनी त्या खातीर आमकां खरें म्हळ्यार सातत्यान ह्यो कार्यावळी मुखार व्हरप शक्य जाता. हांव मुजरत येता सगळे तातूंतले कितलेशेच तरणाटे म्हाका हांगा म्हज्या मुखार दिसतात, हांव सगळ्यांची नांवां घेना पूण तांचे उपकार मानता की तांकां लागून कोंकणी वाचन विश्व 2 वर्सां पुराय करपाक शकले आनी 2 वर्सांचेर थांबनासतना हांव जाणा कोंकणी वाचन विश्व मुखार वतले आनी चड कार्यावळी आयोजीत जातल्यो. जुलय म्हयन्यान आमी एक ल्हानशी बसका घेतली, म्हणजे ऑनलायना कडल्यान कोविड सोंपला अशें धरलें जाल्यार आमी आतां ऑफलायना कडेन वचपाक जाय आनी कशा तरेन ह्यो कार्यावळी मुखार वच्च्यो हाचो एक तरेन विचार करपा खातीर आमी ती बसका घेतिल्ली. आनी तातूंत आयची कार्यावळ गोंय विद्यापीठांत जावची अशी आस्त आमी उक्तायली आनी आकाश पलाश हांणी ही जबाबदारी स्विकारली आनी मोठ्या उमेदीन ही कार्यावळ हांगा घडोवन हाडली. त्या खातीर हांव परत एक फावट तांचे आनी तशेंच गोंय विद्यापीठाचे उपकार व्यक्त करता. आयज हांगा मुजरत मुखेल सोयरे म्हणून हजर रावन प्रोफेसर मेनन हांणी आमकां आमची उर्बा वाडयली आनी आपले विचार व्यक्त केले. एका तरेन हांव म्हणन की विज्ञान आनी संशोधन हाचो सांगड घालत तांणी खूब सुंदर अश्यो देखी दिल्यो आनी अर्थातूच आमच्या ज्ञानात तांणी भर घाली. आय थँक यू सर फॉर एक्सेप्टिंग अवर इन्वायट टू बी द चीफ गेस्ट एट दीस ओकेजन एंड शेअरिंग युअर थॉट्स विथ अस. हांव प्रोफेसर भट हांचेय बी उपकारी आसा. हांव जाणा आमकां हांगा कोणाकूच ओसामा बीन लादेन जावपाचें ना आनी खंयचेच ट्वीन टावर उडोवपाचें ना, बट म्हाका इतलेंय खबर आसा की अशे ल्हान विध्वंसक डिस्ट्रक्टीव थॉट्स आमच्या मनान दर दिसा दर खिणाक येता. म्हाका दिसता तांणी सांगला ते प्रमाण आमी जर वाचनाचो आदार घेतलो जाल्यार अशे तरेचे विचार पयस करपाक आनी एका योग्य मार्गान मुखार वचपाक आमकां नक्कीच आदार जातलो. आय थँक यू सर फॉर शेअरिंग युअर थॉट्स विथ अस ऑन दीस ओकेजन. परत एक फावट हांव डॉक्टर हनुमंत चोपडेकर आनी पुराय गोंय विद्यापीठाक देव बरें करूं म्हणटा ही कार्यावळ आमकां हांगा घडोवन हाडपाक दिली म्हणून. तशेंच वेगवेगळ्या महाविद्यालयातले शिक्षक आनी तरणाटे विद्यार्थी हांगा हजर आसात, तांकांय बी हांव देव बरें करूं म्हणटा. म्हाका दिसता 2-3 दिसां पयलीं आमी वेगवेगळ्या महाविद्यालयांक ईमेल धाडली. चवथीचो बोवाळ आशिल्लो पूण तातूंतय बी कितलेशेच महाविद्यालयांनी आमकां खूब बरो प्रतिसाद दिवन ते हांगा आज हजर आसा. हांव तांकां मना काळजांत सावन दिनवास म्हणटा. तशेंच आयची वेगवेगळी सत्रां जातली, त्या सत्रांनी आपले विचार व्यक्त करपी सगळे तरणाटे इश्ट तशेंच ह्या सत्रांचे अध्यक्ष तांकांय बी हांव ह्या वेळार दिनवासता. ही कार्यावळ यशस्वी जातलीच आनी ह्या कार्यावळींतल्यान ह्या परिसंवादांतल्यान जाता तितले चड आनी बरें हांगच्यान घेवन या. सगळ्यांक परत एक फावट दिवस.
देव बरें करूं. आयच्या परिसंवादाचो उक्तावण सुवाळो हांगाच सोंपता.